Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to the 66th edition of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast, recorded here in northwest central London, just off historic Abbey Road. And yes, 66 is not quite 666, but that would have been appropriate for last week's show. Last week's show was on Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast as it turned 40 here in the month of March 2022. And so to bookend that story, for the 66th show, we're going to do Fear of the Dark, the 1992 effort by Iron Maiden. It's kind of a bookend on the original tenure of Bruce Dickinson as the lead singer of Iron Maiden. He came in 1982, replacing Paul Di'Anno after the first two Iron Maiden records, Iron Maiden and Killers. Really up their game. Number of the Beast is considered a classic heavy metal staple, top 5, top 10 of all time, and had a lot of classic hits on there, and we hope that you go back and check out that show if you haven't already. Fear of the Dark is different. This comes after Bruce had been in the band for a decade, and they really did work pretty hard. I mean, what did they make? About 8 albums during that time? Let's see, we had Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, No Prayer for the Dying, and then I guess this is the 7th, was Fear of the Dark, not to mention the classic Live After Death from the Power Slave tour. So they've been working hard, and Bruce Dickinson had made a solo album, Tattooed Millionaire. In 1990, Adrian Smith had left. Jannick Gers replaced him as the second lead guitarist on No Prayer for the Dying. And now, on Fear the Dark, Jannick was writing some songs, but it seems like maybe the Maidens had kind of gotten to the end of their rope here a little bit. Like maybe Bruce was ready to move on and not be in Iron Maiden. He did leave after this album, and he had already kind of decided to do so during the tour, so some of the tour wasn't as good as it could have been. You feel like maybe they didn't have all their best ideas anymore. They weren't firing on all cylinders anymore, maybe. And after the decade that they just had with all the work, all the records, all the touring, maybe they were sick of each other. Maybe they needed to take a little bit of a break and step back for a little bit. So we thought it would be interesting. Both of these records, Number of the Beast and Fear of the Dark, having big anniversaries, with 40th for Number of the Beast, the 30th anniversary of Fear of the Dark, where they're doing videos, they're trying a power ballad, which is not really their thing. They're trying some sing-along choruses, which maybe is great if the audience does it, but is not really built for Iron Maiden. So we may not love this one, but there are some really key Iron Maiden moments. Of course, the title track, Fear the Dark, made very famous by their show in Rock in Rio, and the video and single that came from that really shows the power that they still had to have those long runners, those proggy metal epic songs that make Iron Maiden who they are. Now, on to a little bit of business here. We want you to tweet us at ugly_werewolf and at ActionJack72. Let us know which albums, bands, concerts, DVDs, and books you want us to review. And of course, we want you to subscribe and download wherever you get your podcasts. Good Pods has been very good to us. It's a great place to interact with independent podcasters. But anywhere you get it, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Google Play, anywhere you get it, please leave us a good review if you're enjoying the show. And if you point it out to us, we see it, hey, maybe we'll read it on the show. It just helps us find more listeners like you and keep us rock and rolling. We've got a lot of exciting plans for the near future here that we can't wait to share with you. But for now, let's dig into 1992's Fear the Dark by Iron Maiden here on The Wolf. Fear the Dark, 1992, Iron Maiden. We're living together in college. We had just kind of gotten into Iron Maiden during our freshman year a little bit, right? This comes out at the end of our freshman year.
Yeah.
But we didn't get that into it. It was like we just started to get into the old classic stuff, and it was as if we weren't ready for new Maiden yet, is kind of the way I'm recalling it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the other problem, too, was we were right smack in the middle of grunge.
Right.
And Iron Maiden was not that. So, yeah, we were working our way through the catalog at that point in time.
Yeah, also, I mean, everyone says the world changed as soon as grunge came out, and it may have for record companies. But the fact of the matter is, in that 1991-92 corridor, a lot of big-time classic rock came out, too, right? I mean, U2 was touring all over Achtung Baby, and it was all over the charts. Guns N' Roses had Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, and they were huge. They were the biggest band in the world. Metallica had the Black Album, and they kind of usurped Guns N' Roses as the biggest band in the world. Plus, Def Leppard came back after 5 years in the death of Steve Clark. Plus, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers came back after Tom Petty did the Full Moon Fever. Plus, Kiss came back with their best album in decades in Revenge, Plus, Dire Straits came back with their last album ever, after 5 or 6 years since Brothers in Arms. So, while, the world was shifting a little bit for people like us who love classic rock, there was still a lot of great classic stuff coming out, right? Rush, Roll the Bones was huge to us. Keith Richards' second solo album, Main Offender, came out, and we listened to that nonstop, right? So while the world was shifting, and we've always been, I'd say we always kind of skewed a little older in our musical tastes anyway. So when the new stuff is happening, not only would we maybe not pick up on it right away, but we would almost have disdain for it. Because it's like, well, if people our own age who don't understand the values of the 70s Stones, and, they made New Kids on the Block possible, who cares what they like now, right?
It's tough for a band like this because, again, the world was shifting, and I don't think that they wanted to bring Maiden with them at that point in time. And you're right, Kiss came out with a big record, but that was before they put the makeup back on, so that was kind of a weird in-between. Like, it was a great record, but did people really embrace it? No. We were getting into the catalog. I didn't really pay that much attention to this record when it came out, but I think I may have been wrong.
Well, I understand that, yeah. And then, our buddy Mike came into our lives, and he was way into Iron Maiden and could play guitar and all that. And he was always but Mike's one of those guys who thinks, everything they've ever done is awesome, like they've never had a bad song. So you have to take some of what he says with a grain of salt. He thinks every song Kiss has ever done is, fantastic. Like, really? Have you heard stuff like You Make Me Rock Hard? It's...
all night.
Yeah, it's like for the guy who dropped out of the worst high school in the district, not because he had to take care of his mom or something like that, but because his academic career wasn't going anywhere. And now he's on the bus and he's talking to some old lady who's trying to ignore him. He's like, that song by Kiss, You Make Me Rock Hard? Do you get it? Because he's talking about rocking and rolling really hard, but he's also talking about getting his dick hard. Do you get it now? I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, they're not all winners. They can't all be. And then once he was educating me on some Iron Maiden stuff, even when I saw the album cover, which to me now is better than the way I remember it, but at the time, it was this is not classic Eddie, right? This is not Derek Riggs. This is somebody else his name happens to be Melvin Grant. His name happened to be Melvin Grant. And he's done a few Iron Maiden covers over the years. I think he's the second biggest contributor of Iron Maiden covers behind Derek Riggs. But it's it's not the same. It doesn't look the same. At first, I thought that kind of sucked. Now I look at it it's actually kind of cool. It's like a Nosferatu tree being, Eddie, kind of a cool thing. What do they call it? A dryad or dryad, something like that. It's a mythical creature. But it didn't follow. And it's weird that the artwork might determine whether or not you listen to an album. Only for someone like Iron Maiden would that make sense. But, I got to tell you, I don't listen to Dance of Death at all, because that album cover is horrible.
Huh. Okay. No, I can see that. And you're right. It was different. It didn't follow along with the classic, Eddie formula.
Right.
And I think, maybe that was a turnoff at the time. Forget it. Next. This can't be any good because it's new. These guys were big, 7 or 8 years ago.
Right.
But now, we'll just put that on the pile. But looking at it now, it's pretty good. It doesn't, it's kind of I know they wanted to change to more like the 90s, less cartoonish. And I think Riggs had at least one idea that he submitted and they didn't like it. It wasn't like they said, they told him no. They were just like, no, we're going in a different direction. So I can imagine that may have been a turnoff for especially big time fans because you were used to a package. Right. It all went together. So I don't know. And the fact too that, now they're starting to make videos. So, have you sold out? Are you trying to be an MTV band now, or what are you doing?
Well, and the world was shifting, right? So, Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son are two albums that we love. And there's a lot of big classic heavy metal, also very proggy, if you listen to those, right? So then comes No Prayer for the Dying. Adrian Smith is left. Jannick Gers, who was with Bruce Dickinson on his solo record, Tattooed Millionaire, he steps in. And they wanted to do something a little more stripped down, not so operatic or proggy. They used their Rolling Stones mobile recording studio, which has made, Led Zeppelin 4, Who's Next, some of the most amazing records and a lot that we've reviewed on this show. But for whatever reason, that sound just didn't work for them. It just didn't turn out good. And No Prayer for the Dying is one of the most maligned Iron Maiden albums in the catalog. So then once again, they're like, okay, let's change it. Steve created a studio that was in the barn on his property, which I guess the mobile recording studio was parked next to when they were recording No Prayer for the Dying. So he went ahead and built out a whole studio that they could use to make this record. But again, there's just turmoil going on in the band. Bruce is kind of dissatisfied. He's ready to move on. Jannick is getting some songwriting in. I mean, I think he co-writes 5 songs on the record, some with Bruce, some with Steve Harris. But he doesn't have what Adrian had. Now, he's a good player. There's no doubt about it. But when you change that lead guitar, even though there's 2 of them, it changes your sound. Plus, now there's this shift going on. First of all, Metallica has taken over the world, and it's a lot less proggy, high-in-the-sky Iron Maiden, even though they loved Iron Maiden. It's more heavy, thrashy. Even Judas Priest, who Iron Maiden had toured support, and, we're kind of a lot alike in part of the 80s. They had come out with Painkiller in the 90s, which is a real thrash. I mean, it's their return to form, one of their best albums ever. So they're like, no, we got to do something a little more different here. And I don't know, although I believe it's an improvement over No Prayer for the Dying, still isn't quite right. There's still something missing the mark on a lot of these.
Huh. Interesting. I didn't really pay this one much attention when it came out.
Right.
But listening to it now, it's different. It's dark. I think it's got some pretty good tracks on it. And just so I remember getting a copy of this, and I can't remember who had it, but somebody did that I knew. And just looking at it, I knew it was different. Mm-hmm. You open it up, everybody's wearing black. Okay, cool. Like, they're leathered out. Bruce has got a really cool, like, leather outfit that he's got on. Mm-hmm. Like rocker leather pants, biker jacket. Nobody's wearing, like, T-shirts or not T-shirts, but, like, just T-shirts. It looks like it's cold. It looks like, this is we're kind of making more of a rock album, not the proggy stuff that they did before.
The Space Lizard pants are gone.
And the pirate shirt is gone, too.
The pirate shirt is gone, yeah.
That was an improvement.
Yeah.
So I think they were trying to do that. You're right. I didn't like the Eddie at the beginning. Now it fits really well.
Yeah.
For seeing what they did later on. Yeah. What is this thing coming to life at night? Is this some kind of like, this is going to get you.
Right.
This is going to attack you in the woods, probably kill you. And it's the only, and I went back and looked, it's the only record where the logo is up and down instead of across the top.
Ah, that's interesting.
So it's just off a bit. It's just, I don't know what we're doing on this one, but it is, I like it. I like it a lot more now than I did when it first came out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And what it's kind of bookended by, right? No Prayer for the Dying, which was not their best time of turmoil. They're taking on a new guitar player, and Bruce may have used some of his best stuff on his solo album, so he comes with less stuff. And then afterwards, the first one with Blaze Bayley, which was
The X Factor.
The X Factor, because X10, yeah, and then Virtual 11 was the one after that. Some of the stuff they did with Blaze was good. It's just that his voice isn't Bruce Dickinson's. Yes, Bruce Dickinson replaced somebody in Paul Di'Anno, but the upgrade was fantastic. So then changing to Blaze is it's a gear shifter, and it's not exactly what the fans wanted anymore. So this kind of stands on a peak because it's between a couple of low spots for the band is the way I look at it.
Right. And you didn't know at this point in time, but this was going to be the last one for Bruce for 8 years until he came back. So I think you're right. This was even though the band hadn't broken up yet, they did a big tour after this. I think they did Donington that year, but he was on the way out. Things were shifting. This record is, if you just look at the tracks on this thing, this is rough. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everything is about fear. I mean, even though the title is Fear of the Dark, you've got fear just runs through the entire deal. I kind of forgot what was happening then, but I mean, this was like the Gulf War was going on,
Right.
and there was a lot of turmoil in the world, and I think they tried to reflect it in this record.
Yeah, and regime shifts in the U.S. and in the U.K., getting away from the Reagan-Bush era into the Clinton years, getting away from Thatcherism in the U.K., changing that up a little bit. But then, also the threat of AIDS and things like that pops up in here, and I can remember vividly our freshman year that I think it was a Thursday in October, it came out that Freddie Mercury had AIDS, and on the Friday he died from AIDS, and then a month later, or maybe not even that long, Magic Johnson came out as HIV positive, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's fear there, fear in the changing and the unknown. So there's war, there's changing politics, which used to be a little more civilized than they are these days, it seems. But we'll touch on that stuff here. And yeah, and the fear of a nasty disease that can kill people just because they had sex or they went to the blood bank to get a transfusion or whatever. But yeah, and then plus there's grunge. Plus, heavy metal has got a makeover. It's not just the Bon Jovis and Motley Crues with the sprayed up hair and the pretty clothes. Now it's like Metallica owns the scene. They wear black. The hair just falls over their head. It's hard, thrashy. It's not necessarily all that melodic all the time. It's tuned down like Sabbath a little bit, So, and then grunge comes in, which is still don't like grunge. I mean, I still don't like it,
You haven't been sold on it yet.
No, I mean, life didn't suck all the time for me, right? So I understand. I mean, I get it. There's some people who don't want to be happy. They don't aspire to be. I mean, would you aspire to be Billy Corgan, like a bald guy whining into the microphone? Or would you aspire to be John Bon Jovi? I would aspire to the latter, but that's me.
And I know we're off on a tangent now, but I know that's one of the things that I think both of us had a problem with back then. It's, you want your rock stars to be, I live in a giant house with 57 cars and chicks everywhere, and it's a party 24 hours a day. And then it turns into, I don't like my life.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Daddy doesn't understand me.
Yeah, stop that.
It's like, yeah. Of course, Daddy doesn't understand you, Kurt Cobain. You smell bad. You have bad interpersonal skills. People shouldn't worship you. You're an anti-hero because no one should want to be like you. They're like you by accident.
Right.
They can't help it. But there are a lot of people like that. So okay, but I do admire the Maiden for they forge ahead. They just kind of forge ahead, and there's ups and downs. But they forge ahead, and Rod Smallwood's like, we got to take him into the 90s. So it's okay if we don't use Derek Riggs. It's okay if Eddie looks a little bit different. We need to freshen it up. It's okay if some of these songs start to sound a little bit different because we got to evolve. We got to change. We can't just do Peace of Mind 2 or Seventh Son 2. Maybe that would be Eighth Son of the Eighth Son. I don't know. But they press forward. What's interesting to me about this record is, although I think it sold fine around the world because there's so many big Iron Maiden fans out there, the singles didn't seem to do a whole lot of damage, and they never really played them after that tour. None of the singles. Only a couple of songs survived the set list, Fear of the Dark being the number one. But then I think Afraid to Shoot Strangers was in the set list for years. I think Blaze liked to sing that song a little bit. But of the 12 songs in this album, really the only one that anyone ever listens to is Fear of the Dark. Wasn't a single because it's over 7 minutes long. But all the singles have just been kind of discarded by the band.
Yeah, and which I think but that's how they roll though too. I mean, they never were a singles band. They're going to play what they want to play. That is kind of funny though that they did put out 3 singles from this record, and the one that they end up playing is the 7.5 minute opus from the end of this thing.
Right.
But I mean, they've always just done things their own way, and I think that's why they're still around today. I mean, you could get a list of everybody that was big in 1992, and you wouldn't remember half of them, probably maybe more than half. But they were huge, and they were going to take over the world, and they just didn't.
Yeah, or now they're all dead.
Could be.
That puts it. And look, Iron Maiden never had single success in America, but in UK and Europe, yes. I mean, they had big singles, and a lot of those are the hits, like From Peace of Mind, Number of the Beast, Power Slave, that we like. I mean, a hit is a hit whether it goes up the charts or not. A good song is a good song no matter what. And because U.S. radio never really understood them, or their A&R people didn't push them the right way, for whatever reason, Iron Maiden never went up the singles charts in the U.S. Different in the UK, different in countries around the world. But that said, the 3 songs that they chose to make videos for, a couple of which had a decent budget on, they don't care about those anymore, it would seem.
Right.
Hi, this is Christy Alexander Hallberg, author of the novel Searching for Jimmy Page, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast.
You want to start with the beginning here?
Yeah.
So I got this, I guess it must have been the 98 reissues.
Okay.
So I had gotten a job, my first real job, in about 2000.
Okay.
So we're going to go to lunch. Who wants to drive? Oh, I'll drive. That's fine. So we get in, and people I work with, they're probably a good 10, maybe 15 years older than I am. And I had, for whatever reason, I just had this disc in the disc player.
Okay.
Yes, folks, that had a disc player in the car. I was that fancy. And so I was like, interesting. So it just comes on, and Be Quick or Be Dead, and I just kind of turn it up, and so Bruce starts screaming. At the beginning, he's got and I could hear one of the guys in the back just say, "Oh my God." And I was like, "Oh yeah, ha 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 ha." And I didn't make him listen to the whole thing, but I just think it was funny that it was like that. Oh, what is this horrible thing? It's not a bad way to start the record. It's pretty frantic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their best song, but if you want to start a record, you could do a lot worse than this one.
You're right about that. Yeah, I mean, frantic is a good way to put the kind of fast paced, get up, galloping, get ready to go. That opening wail at the beginning is very Rob Halford.
Okay.
It's very. I mean, it sounds like something I've heard him do on records several times. So he's like, we're out there kicking it the same way that Priest kicked it up a notch on Painkiller. We're kicking it up a notch here, right?
Yeah.
I get why they chose it as a single. Because of that frantic, fast pace, because of the screaming. And, it's when he's talking about voting for what you want to hear in the song, it was prescient at the time. It's more prescient 30 years later. Just like, I'm just going to, if you're going to tell me abortion's bad, then I'm going to vote for you because that's what I think. It doesn't matter about the 50 other things on the ballot that you need to decide, just whatever. And it's talking about greed, which is always an overarching thing in a lot of the theme in a lot of their songs and everything. The video is a little stripped down, right? It's not on a sound stage. It's just like out on a wharf or something like that. They cut around, quick cuts and all that kind of stuff. There's a little bit of an actor doing some businessman type stuff. It's not my favorite, you're right, but it is a good way to start the album. And I get why they picked it as the opening single.
Yeah, if you've got any kind of motion sickness, proclivity, don't watch this video because it's just, like you said, quick cuts. Back and forth, he's running. They're cutting away from things. They were trying to be very artistic here. Right.
And it was backed. I mean, the B-sides on some of them had a nice cover of Space Station Number 5 from Montrose when Sammy Hagar was in the band. Of course, Iron Maiden's been great at putting out a lot of B-sides, whether they be covers or live versions of their old stuff or that kind of thing. And you say, hey, look, they're not a singles band. And it didn't chart in America, but number 2 in the UK, number 3 in Norway, top 20 Sweden, Switzerland, New Zealand, top 10 in Ireland, 2nd in Finland, 3rd in Germany. I mean, a lot of people were excited about it, right? A lot of people hear, oh, Iron Maiden's got a new single, let's hear it, let's get it. And at first you're like, oh yeah, fast paced, that's it. I just think after the first couple listens, you're like, yeah, maybe it's not their best. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that it especially when you're going to put together a live show with all of the catalog stuff that they have, there's just no place for this one.
Got to agree with you there. Yeah, for sure. So that one, but all right, so not your favorite, but a good opener. Straight in From Here to Eternity. I remember this one vividly. Didn't love it then. Don't love it now.
All right. I could have sworn, I couldn't find any proof for this, but I could have sworn that at one point in time, Steve Harris said something about this being a goof. Like, hey, I can write all you ever do is write these, 7.5 minute epic deals. I can write a song that can go on the radio. And this was his attempt to do it. It doesn't sound like an Iron Maiden song. It sounds like something that they had done, like I said, like a goof or something. It's a little bit catchy. It's got a pretty good chorus to it, but it's just not a Maiden song.
Well, it's got a lot of kind of double entendre in it, right? Because you're talking about,
right.
Apparently it's the last story of Charlotte the Harlot, right? Which, started with Charlotte Harlot, went to 22 Acacia Avenue, and now, this kind of wraps it up a little bit, which I think is a little weird just because that was, I believe, Adrian Smith's writing line through there. But, yeah, you talk about, riding on something, it's about a girl on the motorcycle. Well, maybe it's about riding a motorcycle. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. When they all sing Hell Ain't a Bad Place, and the chorus is not that cool. They're not Def Leppard. They don't do, harmonies, man. Just let Bruce sing. That's not. Now, the video was higher budget. They're playing in kind of like an apocalyptic part of hell or something like that. They've got this gorgeous stripper kind of girl, going down the aisle with somebody. And so the video, I think, tells the story well. And that's cool. Jannick is a spaz. He's obviously a talented player, but it just seems like hopping around and being silly is more important than playing the notes sometimes. Now, I like the guy. When he pointed to me and Rob at the Shades nightclub when they were with Blaze Bayley, I still count that as one of my favorite Maiden moments of all time. And obviously he's been a great contributor to the band over the last 3+ decades, but it's kind of like, can you just play something that kicks ass and stand still, or do you have to be jumping around and swinging your guitar around all day? It's like the other guys play and they also throw shapes and mime things out, whereas he's miming and then he's also kind of playing the guitar, in my opinion.
He's got his leg up on the amps and, swinging the thing around and playing where he puts his hand, he reverses it.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a gimmick.
Yeah. It's for the show, yes.
Yeah. And in that video, he's just flying all over the place. And I'm like, I understand you're not really plugged in right there and you're just miming, as they say, to the music. So you're creating something that's visually cool, but whatever. And the thing is, when they're on stage now and it's the three of them, every single song for the first 20 years of their career were 2 guitar songs. So the third guitarist is kind of superfluous. So then you can just do silly things, or you can hop around, just kick in a note here and there. It doesn't really matter. But that's just my take on it. Whereas Adrian and Dave, to me, are consummate pros. Jannick's a little bit of a clown. Just my opinion.
I think he does add something to the band, but it is kind of disconcerting when you're doing all that kind of stuff on the side of the stage. Although he's got a couple of writing credits on here, so I really wonder how the dynamic changed with Adrian being gone. Because he wrote some pretty heavy hitters for the band, and Absolutely. Now it's kind of like, okay, I guess my question would be, and I would have to go back and look at the records since Adrian came back. Would he have gotten this many writing credits if Adrian was still there?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, no, 5 of the 12 songs are co-writes, including the first single, Be Quick or Be Dead, he wrote with Bruce, right? So, I don't know. But let's move on. He didn't write From Here to Eternity. That was Steve Harris on his own. As was the third track, Afraid to Shoot Strangers. This, to me, is a little bit more classic Maiden. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah. Now we're getting into this here, because it starts off kind of like, like if you didn't know who it was, and you put it on, you would hear that kind of ethereal intro and be like, this is a Maiden song.
Mm-hmm.
It just has that signature to it at the beginning. So now to me, this is kind of where the album really starts.
That's a good way to look at it. The first 2 are the singles. They're brief. They're like 3.5-minute songs. This is getting towards being a 7-minute song. It's like, okay, this is Iron Maiden. It's more epic. We're talking about war. You got Steve's big melodic bass line with a little guitar, at the opening. Like, that's Maiden for sure. Bruce comes in low, and he's melodic until the change. Is there a little, because eventually you pick up the pace a little bit. Is there a little synth in there? Whether it's guitar synth or keyboard synth?
It could be sneaking in there. I think it's interesting, too, because the lyrics are only in the front half of the song.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get into the solo, everything else is just the chorus, which I don't remember them doing that on too many other songs. But yeah, there could be some synth in there.
Yeah, I mean, before it gets into the classic runner, and then there's the solo, and they double each other, and Bruce is back with a vengeance at the end. His voice is powerful, you know. It's a good one. It's a good one, and I understand why they played this a little bit more. And like I said, Blaze apparently liked it. They played it during those years he was in the band. So, and again, I understand why it wouldn't be a single. If it's almost 7 minutes long, they're not going to play that on the radio. So I get it. But this is kind of a highlight. It's one of the two that kind of survived in the live set past the Fear of the Dark tour.
And I like it too because it's one of those things where, wait, what do you mean afraid to shoot strangers? What are you talking about? And then you listen to it, oh, it's about somebody having to go to war, and you know, they know this is going to be just an absolute mess. I don't want to do this. This is horrendous. But again, the world was at war at this point in time, and we as Americans, we're just so insulated from the rest of the world. It's really, I think, a lot more terrifying to live over in the UK because you're so much closer to everything else.
Yeah, and you know, here we are on the precipice of war in the Ukraine, and it's not exactly our backyard, but it's not that far away, whereas in the U.S., it couldn't be much further away. But yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking, and to know that that's Europe. I mean, we're in Europe, and that's Europe, you know, so that's gotten a lot of people nervous around here, as it should. But yeah, back home, it's like, well, who won the dunk contest last night? You know? Next tune, Fear is the Key. And here you're right again, Jackson. Fear is pervasive throughout.
Yeah, just the whole thing. And this is one of those ones where you kind of listen to it the first time and you don't really get what he's talking about. And then they move into, oh, wait a minute. This is about, you know, no one cares until somebody famous dies. Wait, hold on. Wait, what are we talking about here? Oh, this is about AIDS. And this is about, I mean, and again, we were kind of too young to have lived through, I guess, the golden age of hooking up with people where it was, you know, pretty much consequence free. Now, not so much. So yeah, it's this fear again of, you know, can I meet this person? Can we get together and possibly die very quickly from a horrible disease that is you couldn't tell that they had it.
Right. Well, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, there was kind of that golden age between the dawn of birth control and then the advent of AIDS. Where, you know, the worst thing that happened to you, you get a penicillin shot, you know, the next day, right? And then, but no, and they're right, you know, it's like, well, you know, AIDS is a problem. Oh, really? Who gets it? Well, the most people who get it are drug addicts and homosexuals. Well, to the vast majority of conservative America, that's not going to show up as a light on their screen, you know. But then as soon as somebody like Arthur Ashe dies from it, you know, because he needed a blood transfusion, or Freddie Mercury dies from it because he's this huge star, now it's going, oh, okay, well, now it's serious. Magic Johnson's HIV positive? Oh, God, we got to take this seriously, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. So they're right about that. So it's an important song in that it's addressing that. However, the music itself, it's very power chord kind of generic to me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you may be talking about good heavy material, and Freddie Mercury may have been an inspiration for it, but, you know, there's an odd guitar sequence before, like, the bridge, before the change, and there's a lot of feedback in this, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 seconds. It's odd. Then you have the time change. And it's not a great solo. Day you die, you fade. I just feel like it's poorly executed. It's a great idea for a song. It's an important message, but sonically, it's not that good to me.
Yeah. Okay. I can see why you would say that. I thought that I've got, you know, my notes here are, you know, the solos are good, but yeah, it's kind of a little, yeah, it's not the best thing on the record.
It's a little messy. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a gallop. I think there's somebody strumming an acoustic guitar. Yeah, you're right. This was kind of a little bit of a mess here.
Yeah, you know, that's right. I mean, I think what they intended to do was good, was noble, was timely. and all that. But I just think the execution of the song, it could have been better. And I, obviously didn't get a lot of airplay or concert play after 1992 or 3. And meanwhile, look, Bruce had kind of already decided he was going to leave the band, but he was going to do the tour because the tour is booked, and well, it's your obligation to do the tour. And I think Steve was pissed off about it because, to Steve, Iron Maiden is the world, and he's put a lot into it, and he is Iron Maiden. And Bruce at the time was a little flippant about it, like, my sun doesn't rise and set around which band I'm in, because, he's a polymath. He can do 1,000 different things. So he's like, I can go do something else. But see, that's a little flippant because it is an important band and you play an important role. But Steve's like, if we're doing a huge show like at a festival or something like that, like a Donington or, whatever it might be,
right,
then he's into it. He's up there, he's running around, he's charging the crowd and that kind of thing. But if we're going to a show, maybe it's a smaller venue, like maybe only 8,000 people show up, it seems like Bruce kind of phones it in. And from all accounts, Steve was right about that. But then Bruce kind of fired back, was like, well, should I be out there smiling the whole time? Because I'm about to leave the band. It's like, why is this guy so happy if he's leaving the band? What's going on? But then if you go out there and do a bad show, it's like, why did I pay my 20 euros or 20 quid to get into this? And I'm like, that's just a bad thing all the way around. When you leave, you need to just leave. You can't say, I'll leave after this. If you've already made it up in your mind to leave, you got to go.
So do you know why he left the band? Because I was trying to look and see if I could find anything concrete. I mean, he had already made a solo record.
Right.
And then come back to the band. So, like, what else? What else were you looking for? Because usually that's like I want to go do something, I want to express myself creatively in another way. Okay, well then just go make another record, and then when you're ready, come on back, and we'll do it that way. I know that his solo record was kind of more, it was a hard rock record, but it was more poppy than the Maiden stuff. So I don't know why he decided at this point in time, you know what, I'm done with this whole thing, unless he was just tired of Harris at that point in time.
Maybe there'd been a fracture with Harris. Maybe he just wanted to get out of the big machine. Iron Maiden is a great big machine. I mean, and they've had the same like management and roadies, some of them for 40 years, management for 45 years. I mean, they don't have a lot of turnover, but they have a lot of people to take care of. And Steve is always pushing forward new songs, new videos, new albums, new tours, new merch. And maybe, and he probably had a good time recording his solo albums. Like, all my ideas, I can still write with people if I want, but I don't have to deal with all these other egos. I don't have to go through this big Iron Maiden machine. Plus, then when I want to go get an additional pilot's license, I don't have to make sure it's within the confines of the band time frame. He was a parent. He's got kids. Maybe he just wanted to get off the hamster wheel for a little while. Who knows? And he didn't mention it that much. He didn't really talk about it in his live show that we saw.
I don't remember. I don't remember any part of that. And I was kind of, are we going to, because he did it chronologically.
Right.
So I was like, okay, are we going to get any insight to that? But nah, he didn't mention that at all.
No, he didn't. I don't know. I mean, if I go back here, let's see here. He's written 5 songs on the record. 3 of them were co-writes with Jannick. 2 of them were co-writes with Dave Murray. No co-writes with Steve Harris. So maybe that's the answer to your question.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, well, moving on to song number 5, Childhood's End. I don't know, I like this more than the last one. I mean, it's more promising than a lot of the previous ones, and it's a little bit more classic Maiden. But, I mean, it's still no hope, no life, just pain and fear, no food, no love, just greed is here. Kind of that overarching themes of the machine crushing the individual, right?
Yeah, it's got an interesting drum beat at the beginning. It kind of sounds almost like a little bit like Force 10. At the beginning.
Interesting.
Nothing that I'd ever heard Nico play before. It's a nice change of pace to start this one off. But yeah, once they get going on this one, it's just crushing you. Yeah, you're talking about maybe like third world situations or something where it's just all right. I know it's bad out there. Stop. I can't take it anymore. I know.
And Childhood's End. Well, for some people, Childhood's End, can come very early if you're in a pretty desperate situation, right? So.
Right. The other thing I kind of like about this too is that they only use that line at the end and the outro. It's not the chorus or anything out, and they just kind of like stamp that and then walk off after the song's done.
Right. Exactly. And then we get into Wasting Love.
Mm-hmm.
The third and final single off the record. I don't know, would you call it a power ballad?
I think it's their attempt at a power ballad. It's as close as Maiden is ever going to get to a power ballad.
That's right. That's fair enough, right? And look, and for bands, which some people call hair bands now, from like that late '80s period, especially, and into the early '90s, Queensryche had some great records before they released Silent Lucidity. But as soon as they released that, that goes up the charts, and now suddenly Empire and Jet City Woman can get on the radio, right?
Right.
And L.A. Guns, what had the Ballad of Jane? They were never on the charts. They do Ballad of Jane, boom, they're all over. So many of hard rock bands did it. Maiden always ignored that because they didn't have to. So it's like, is that what they were trying to do? It's not sweet. It's not acoustic. It's still very Maiden. But do you want to hear AC/DC do a ballad? No. No.
What I like about this is that Bruce is not singing in his normal, yelling operatic. So it's kind of a nice change of pace to hear him sing a different way.
Mm-hmm.
The drums, I don't know whether they had to tie Nico one hand behind his back or something.
Maybe.
It's real in the pocket.
Yeah.
There's really not a whole lot that he's doing. It's not a bad drum part. It's just not what he normally plays. I thought the solo on this one was pretty good. I think, and there's only one.
Right.
I think. I don't think Dave has a solo on this one, but it's not, because usually they do the back and forth.
They trade,
Somebody takes A and then somebody takes B, and then a lot of times they'll play a little bit at the end. But there was just one, so I don't love this song, but I like it that it was a change of pace.
Well, and Jannick did write this one with Bruce Dickinson.
Yeah.
So he got the solo, and I thought his solo was a little odd. I remember it being horrible. I'm like, this song sucks. Back in 92, 93 or whenever I first heard it, I'm like, this is horrible. It's better than I remember. It's a better song than I gave it credit for back in the day, but it's still not great. And a little spare ringing guitar, and then eventually they do some power chords. Boom, boom. And then the video is about a guy. It's basically about a player who had a bunch of lovers over his life, and then he's getting all their names tattooed all over him, and then by the end he's covered in all these women's names. And I'm like, so what's the story? Did he get AIDS? Did he die alone because no one wanted to be with this player? There was a priest in there damning him. So did he go to hell because he was good at picking up chicks? I don't know if I get the story or not.
I wonder if this was done by another band. I don't know. Pick somebody. You never
Tesla.
heard of them
Let's
before.
say Tesla did it.
Yeah, this may have been a hit for somebody else. It was just it just didn't fit with Maiden.
It did not fit with Maiden, and it is a better song than I gave it credit for back in the day. I'll say that. But
okay,
but
still not one that you would want to listen to.
No, in their catalog, my God, there's so many better options. All right, let's move on. Now, I think that was the end of LP 1. See, technically, this was a double LP back in the day.
Oh, okay.
For us, LPs had been dead for a long time. This only ever existed on CD. But technically, It was a double LP back in the day, and then you move on to the next song, which is The Fugitive. There's a bit of an odd rhythm in the chorus bit. It's just a little odd, and the solos seem a little uninspired to me. I don't know. I don't love this one.
The saving grace on this song is that at least it gives you kind of a rest from getting pounded into the ground. It's kind of an old school Maiden.
It's a runner.
Strange land. It's kind of like it's a fantasy story. I'm the fugitive. I'm on the run. I got to get away. Okay. Cops and robbers. We're taking a little break here. It almost doesn't seem like it fits on this record, to be honest, because the rest of it is just so straightforward. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they were trying to do on this one.
Well, yeah, and again, I feel like there's a little synth on there somewhere. Whether it's
sneaking back in there.
Yeah, a little guitar synth or keyboard synth, I'm not sure. It is a kind of a Maiden runner. But, and The Fugitive, that's a kind of a very Maiden title.
Right.
But again, I'm just like, this is not their best effort on the record.
All right.
So let's just move on then.
Okay.
Chains of Misery. Again, great title for an Iron Maiden song. But the power chords, they don't sound like Iron Maiden to me.
No, I really like this song more now that I've listened to it. I really wish they had somebody else in the band that could sing. They don't need Bruce on this one. This is more. This almost sounds like this could have worked for Di'Anno. Just a real kind of straight ahead.
Yeah.
The lyrics are pretty terrible, but
Yeah.
I love the chorus with the just. It sounds like a room full of people just shouting "Chains of Misery." Okay, that's this. It doesn't sound like a Maiden song, but like it works. It's a nice change of pace, but like I said, like Bruce. He puts the Bruce. You got your chains. You don't need that. This could have been somebody else. This could have been the Keith Richards track that they let
someone else
would
do.
sing. Like oh, we're gonna let Dave Murray sing. What? Dave Murray? Yeah, we'll let him sing one. Something like that. This would have been a nice change of pace for another vocalist in the band.
Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, all right, changing the lead vocal would be good, but the whole chorus where everybody's shouting "Chains up," that could work for another band, but for Iron Maiden, no, they don't do that. That's not what they do, and they don't need it.
Yeah, it is a weird. When you listen to this, you're like, how did this even make it on the record? This does not sound like them at all. There's a couple of things on here where and I don't know whether they were trying to go a different direction, like it's the 90s, we're going to mix this up a little bit. I know No Prayer for the Dying just got destroyed.
Right.
So are they trying to, did they say, wait, whoa, okay, that didn't work, let's try something else now?
Maybe. But look, there is some really good guitar work on the song. When they slow it down for the bridge, and then they come in with some really hot solos after it. There's some good stuff about this song that I like. I don't love that chorus. It's not very Maiden, and they don't have sing-along choruses. It could be worse. This is not the worst song on the record. And they take a chance with some stuff that doesn't sound very Iron Maiden. So I give them kudos. Hey, you're not just following a formula here. You're doing something a little different. Some of it's good, some of it not so much.
Yeah, I think this is the only one that Dave Murray gets writing credits on.
No, he also did Judas Be My God with Bruce.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, one of two then. It's just interesting when you've got somebody else thrown into the mix that you maybe get a little bit of different sound.
Right. You're right. No, the only person who writes songs by themselves on this is Steve Harris. He has 1, 2, 3, 4 solo writes, and then he has 1, 2 co-writes with Jannick Gers, Dickinson and Dave Murray, and it's a short one, right? So they're not extending this out. They're not putting us through a whole lot. They're trying to condense it down and do some different stuff. It could be worse. You get to what I think is worse is the next song is The Apparition, right? Some sick guitar work, but the trade from Dave to Jannick is a bit odd in spots. It's a pretty forgettable song, if you ask me. I don't know.
Well, and the thing is, too, now you're into track number 9 on this thing. So we've been at this for a while now. And yeah, it does sound, that's the one thing that I don't like about some of these later Maiden records is it's like, well, we've got to have 2 guitar solos. So, okay, we're going to put that in there. It's great when it works, but it doesn't have to be in every song. And some of these things, it just sounds a little forced. Like, it was almost like one of them walked in the room, like, play a solo right now. Oh, okay, here you go. Wait, that kind of doesn't fit with the song, but it's good, but it doesn't fit in. And it just some of these sound a little forced to me.
Exactly. And I think I hear some synths in there again, which, I know they're trying not to use, but they still are using it somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know. Kind of forgettable here. And look, the album is 60 minutes long, which at the time is very long for an album, right? So if they cut a few of these, and these last few have not been like really long ones, right? Like The Apparition's about 4 minutes, Chains of Misery is about 3.5. You start to cut some of these, make them into B-sides or something like that, and maybe it tightens the album up. I don't know. It's easy for me to say. The 10th song, Judas Be My Guide, I actually like. Cool opening. I think it's an underrated one considering where it is on the album, and it's only 3 minutes long. I don't know. They do some cool doubling on it. What are your notes on it?
Yeah, I like this one. Again, like I said in the last one, you've been at this for a long time, so it's kind of hard if you're listening to the entire record to really give everything it's just dues. It's easier at the beginning because you kind of got you're ready to roll. But yeah, I think this one is good. It's definitely better than The Apparition. And so it makes me, I guess my thing is, it makes me nervous when you see these songs at the end of the record when it's like, okay, were these throwaways or what are we doing here? But no, I like this one, and we're gonna get to the biggie there at the end.
Yeah. Is better than the apparition kind of like better than Ezra? Yeah, because the band Better Than Ezra, like they're rehearsing one day, like, all right, come on, we're gonna go to the state fair, we're gonna see what's going on. They go to the state fair, and there's a band on called Ezra, and it's like, these guys suck. We're better than Ezra. So when we write a song, should we call it Better Than the Apparition?
There we go.
No,
I feel bad for those dudes. We got famous by another band who told us that we suck.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
But when he says Judas Be My God, it's kind of like everything is for sale. I mean, I think it's one of the better songs on the record. But is there anything guided by Judas Priest? Because I'm telling you, that opening wail at the start of the album is very Halford-esque. And that's when they all went to Black Leather, was on Painkiller, except for Glenn, of course, who has to have a little bit of red, but he was then red and black, not just red, So, and now, like you say, now Iron Maiden's all in black. So I don't know, maybe not.
Well, and they've had their careers were, I don't want to say they were intertwined, but they ran parallel for so long.
Right.
I mean, that all throughout the 80s and then into the 90s, the two big British metal bands were Maiden and Priest in the United States. I mean,
right.
I'm sure you could get somebody in here and tell me, oh, well, so-and-so was big. Okay, I'm talking in the U.S. Those were the big two from England.
Right, and they both lost their singers in the 90s. They had to go out and get replacements. Then eventually they got them back. I mean, there's some definite parallels. I mean, Priest was older. They were recording in the early 70s, whereas Maiden didn't get their first album out till 1980. But yeah, I mean, you're right. And they toured together, right? So it definitely intertwined. The second to last song on the record, Weekend Warrior. So at first I figured this is somebody who's like in the Army Reserves or something like that.
Uh-huh.
That's what I believed back in the day. But it's about football hooliganism, which people in the United States really can't get a real flavor of, I don't think, until you really understand the way big-time football and even smaller-time football fandom and the ties to your city or the ties to your town or your village or your hamlet or whatever you want to call it, the ties to your local club, how they feel bonded by this and how they would go to war for their club.
Yeah, I think we consider ourselves diehard fans in the United States. Like, I love the, whatever, fill in the blank, Pittsburgh Steelers or whatever, but not like that.
Not like that.
I mean, you may say, whoever stinks and Pittsburgh is the best. You won't break a bottle over somebody's head.
Right.
Because they badmouth you. They will there. And yeah, guys who are like business people, not like, it gets rough real quick. Let me put it that way. It gets nasty in a hurry.
Yeah. Now maybe it's, some of the Premier League because they are in bigger markets and, some of those tickets are pretty expensive. Maybe not. But I mean, yeah, some people, they go to the game just so they can find people from the other team and fight them. Like, that's the point of the game. Win or lose, yeah, you want them to win, but whether or not you won the fight is what really matters, and it's like, see, that's... We don't have that here. Yeah, well, and we shouldn't, because you don't have any control over the game. I mean, like, Philadelphia Eagles fans are close. Like, my buddy's got stories of, he went into Philadelphia wearing like a Phil Simms of the Giants jersey, and people were spitting on him. Like, he had loogies all over his back, and he would basically run out of the building because he was wearing the other team's jersey. It's because they don't have much in their lives and need something to feel a part of, right? But it's like you're on top of the world of the game, but then come Monday, you're back to being what? A small cog in a big machine. Yeah. Your life's not that great. It's a warning to change your ways before someone will die. And some of the guitar work at the end is kind of cool. It's trying to recapture some old glory. But yeah, I mean, what's the Daniel Radcliffe movie? I got to mention it.
Harry Potter?
No, not that one, dude. I know I can... Is it Green Street? Yeah, I think it's Green Street. Or Green Street Hooligans. It's not Daniel Radcliffe. It's the other. It's Elijah Wood. So I confused Harry Potter with Frodo Baggins. Yeah, no. He's like a kid with like a young guy with like a promising career in the media or whatever. He's from the U.S. or whatever. So he comes over to England and he kind of falls in with these hooligans who are out to fight and to cause trouble at every soccer event for their team, So, and it also got Charlie Hunnam. They were both kind of younger in it, but it's worth a good view just to kind of see what it can really be like. The lengths that they go to defend and fight for this team, a team who would publicly have nothing to do with them, right? It's like, you're not part of the team. You have no control. You don't even necessarily have the money for tickets. You're just there to cause trouble, really. But that's the way it is, And it kind of reminds me growing up in the state of Kentucky, where UK basketball is king, right? Big Blue. Okay. They've won 8 national titles. And sure, UK alums are totally into UK basketball, but the biggest, most ardent UK fans didn't go to UK or to any college for that matter. And they just want something from their state, something they can be a part of to be great. It has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to really do with the players on the team. It's just they want that jersey to do awesome, and they will scream and yell and fight for it. So that's my own personal take on that.
Well, that's the way it is here. I mean, we're probably as far away from Atlanta as we are from Athens.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has Atlanta Falcons anything or Braves or anything else, but everybody's got a Georgia sticker. And you're right. A lot of these people, they never went to college or never went there, but they just have this connection with, the home team, the home players. Yeah.
I had a good friend who sadly passed away a couple years ago, but he grew up a Georgia football fan. And then he went to the University of Florida with me. And at the Florida-Georgia game, he rooted for Georgia. And they kicked our butts one day, and he was jumping up, yeah. I'm like, you go to the University of Florida. What's wrong with you? It's like, nope, Georgia football.
To the other side.
Yeah. Georgia football is life, and I love it. And, I'm just at Florida for some degree, man. I don't care about the Gators, So that's just the way it is for some people. That's all right.
Hey guys, this is Chris from My Rock and Roll Heaven, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London podcast.
Well, we come to the end, and we've talked so many times on the show about the importance of wrapping up the album well. And sometimes it's like with a soft song that kind of lets you trail off and relax. I hope you enjoyed it. Here you go. Say goodbye. A lot of times it's an afterthought. They're like, nope, we're going to put our first song number 1, our second best song number 2, and by the time you get to number 10 or 12, it's just whatever we had left to fit on there. This is one of the best closing songs of an album. In Maiden's catalog, in most anyone's catalog, very rarely do you choose to put your very best song as the last song on the album. Toto's Africa off Toto 4 might be the only other example of that I'm thinking of up the top of my head.
That's a deep dive right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been crying this whole time about where's my Steve Harris epic?
Right.
Where is it? It's got to be here somewhere. I'll get to it. Yeah, here it is, baby. Last but certainly not least, and this is they played this every tour, right? Since then.
Just about. Yeah. And look, and after they did Rock in Rio, it was huge on Rock in Rio. That version is awesome. It's a little faster at the beginning on the record than the way they do it there. They kind of build it a little bit more in the Rock in Rio live. Kind of let it build up to a crescendo a little bit more, and Bruce is way into it. He's goading the crowd, and they kind of have the opening part where you got the harmonics and the bass and the little spare guitar, and then he goes, yeah, and they boom, and they break into the runner, and the crowd's going crazy. Of course, in South America, they sing along with the chorus, oh, and you gotta believe that gives them a charge, man. Besides just seeing hundreds of thousands of people out there, they're singing the melody to them. And then when they break into it and everybody's hopping around, it's bedlam, but it's beautiful. It's rock and roll at its very best.
Yeah, it's interesting that now we're, 12 years into Iron Maiden?
Yeah, recorded Iron Maiden, that's right.
Yeah, and you can pull this out of your mind still. You still have more things to write. Yeah, this is a big one, and probably for me makes the whole record. If this wasn't on this, if this track wasn't on this record, or if it had been something else, I don't think I'd even remember this one. But this really cements the whole thing.
I agree. I mean, this would not have gotten better than a C- rating for me without Fear the Dark. This is almost No Prayer for the Dying, too, without this track,
Yeah.
And it's rare that you save the title track for the last, but I understand that you might not want to start off with it. I understand why they started off with Be Quick or Be Dead. It makes sense, but it's epic. And then the time changes, the time signature changes in it are so good. And when Bruce is... You can see him, when it's time to just hop around, he just lifts his hand like he's lifting marionettes, and all the guitar players are jumping up and down, but everyone in the crowd is doing it too. It's so good. It's so much fun live, and I have seen them do it live. And if you don't feel it, that feeling you get when you're with a crowd of people and they're playing something cool, any band, not just Iron Maiden, but that kind of collective feeling you get like, I'm in a place in time here and we're doing something cool together. If you can't feel it during that song, then I can't help you.
It's such a, I was thinking about that too, that the whole concept of, and they paint a pretty good picture of the being afraid of the dark. Everybody is afraid of the dark. It's such a, at some point in time, I could put you in a situation where now, the lights are off at your house. Okay, fine. I'm not really that afraid, but you could be like the whole thing about how I'm walking alone and someone is or something is following me, or it's just that Oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh.
Yeah, you ever been in a parking lot late at night and you hear a can turn over and you look around, there's no one there. It's like, uh-oh.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Or you're on a street maybe that you don't, you're not super familiar with or something. Yeah. You just kind of get that feeling like, oh, something might be wrong. Oh, yeah. That's what they captured there. And then you go back to Eddie coming to life at night.
Out of the tree, right? Yeah. The tree. Yeah.
I walk alone in the woods. That's not a good idea. He's coming to get you.
Yeah. No. And he starts it off on Rock and Rio. A light in the black. Oh, just a fear of the dark. And that's him. Look, Bruce is an incredible showman. No one's better at getting the crowd up and going than he is. And obviously, you're going to be motivated when you see hundreds of thousands of people out there. But when they're running on this, and this is a classic runner, when they're running on this, there's not much better in their catalog, to be honest with you. And this is an amazing catalog off an album that is not amazing. It's good. I like it. It's better than the previous one. I like it better than the next one. But without, like you said, without this song, this album is not special.
And see, now I'm wondering if things had been different. If Bruce wasn't on his way out, would this have been different? Would it have been, I don't know, maybe a little more energy, and not energy, that's not the word I'm looking for. Maybe the vibe would have been a little different. I don't know. It just kind of seems like if you know the end is near, are you just kind of going through the motions?
That's a fair question, and I can't tell you that I know the answer to that, And they obviously, I'm sure they played this on that tour,
right?
That last tour with Bruce before he came back 7 years later with Adrian to start to create some of their best music, over the last 20, now 22 years that they were together. Yeah, I don't know. It break up, and the whole band didn't break up, obviously, but they definitely took a turn, man, because it was just a few years after this that, like I think we said on the last episode on Number of the Beast, Rob and I went to see them in a nightclub, the Shades Lounge nightclub in Jacksonville, Florida, where the ticket for the show was like one of those raffle tickets you get at a Catholic raffle, And we were not that far away from them. There was, like a bar island between us, but we were not that far. We had incredible views of them. And I give them credit, as I said last time, a lot of bands would just say, that's it, I'm not going to tour America because we don't have it. And Steve Harris is like, no, we'll go play. That's what we do. We play live, so it's not as big. So what? Let's get out there and build it back up. We got a new singer. Let's go out there and show them what we can do, So, and that was the first time I'd seen Iron Maiden, too. So, of course, now I've seen them headlining and in amphitheaters and arenas and could go see them at big festivals and stuff like that. That was my first impression of them live. I'm like, God, that was awesome. That they did that. And then they came and they really delivered, too. They didn't say, all right, well, we don't really want to be here. We want to be in a bigger place, so we'll do an okay show. No, they came out and killed it. And that's why they're still going today, because they never stop. They never quit.
Well, and then it just shows you, too, when Bruce did come back, what was that, 2000 for
Brave New World.
Brave New World. I mean, that exploded because that's what everybody was waiting for.
That's right. And yeah, Bruce has his moments. One of the times I saw Bruce, and it was in an amphitheater, it was a killer set, dude. It was Motorhead, then Ronnie James Dio, then Iron Maiden.
Wow.
And Bruce was in a bit of a mood because he's like, fuck American radio, fuck MTV, because they don't give us any love over here. But he's also like, yeah, look, we got another guitar player in the band. So many people in the band now, you can't even keep track. I'm like, well, Bruce, there's one more guy than there usually is. Just take it easy. But then also down front there, because, sometimes at those places you or your company can buy season tickets. And then if nobody wants them, you can give them away or try to sell them or whatever. So there's some really nice seats down there that were empty because the people who want to see, I don't know, you pick it, Garth Brooks and Eric Clapton, they don't want to see Iron Maiden and they don't want their kids to go. So they're sitting down there. It's like, I don't know who's supposed to be down here, but someone from the back, please come down here and take these good seats, because you can see that the yard, the lawn is filled with metalheads who maybe can only afford $29.95 for a ticket, right? And these seats up front, which maybe they're $100 or more or whatever, they're empty because the so-and-sos who have those season passes, well, I don't go to Iron Maiden, that's beneath me. Those sit empty. So, I mean, he can get pissed off and he can be in a bit of a mood sometimes. He wants to play the big crowds. Well, I don't blame him, but sometimes the crowds aren't as big and you got to still go out there and do your show.
Who does that? I want to say it's Billy Joel does that. Like, you can't buy front row tickets to his show. They're not for sale. And for that reason. And then he goes and picks the guys with the worst seats in the house and brings them down in the front, just random, lottery. Because, it's the same thing. I don't want either nobody sitting there or some dude on his phone the whole time.
Right.
Because he's not really, but he just went because,
because he's a rich jerk, I can get a girl 30 years younger than me to go with her if I get a front row seat. So come on, baby, let's go. Yeah.
I don't know any of the songs. So did they bring people up?
No, well, security wouldn't let them because you can't just run down from the lawn down to the third row. You just can't do that, I thought about doing it, but then I'm like, my seats are actually pretty good. So, I mean,
I'm okay.
They could just kick me out for getting, marginally better seats. I would rather just stay here and finish the show kind of thing. But I went with my buddy Chip to that show and a couple of his pals, Joe and Porter. We went to a few good heavy metal shows together. So shout out to those guys back home. But so overall, man, I mean, look, it's not my favorite Iron Maiden. It's not my least favorite Iron Maiden album. It kind of came at an odd time for the band, odd time for music. They're pushing forward. They're making some shifts. And out of it, they still did some good stuff. Not all of it's great, but for Fear of the Dark, the song alone, which they must have known was awesome because they named the record after it.
Right.
It's worth it.
Right. And I think this was the last one for Martin Birch, right?
That's right. He actually co-produced it with Steve Harris. So this is the first co-production or production for Steve. And I think he also co-produced with Kevin Caveman Shirley and did some stuff later. But Martin Birch, who had an incredible run with Maiden and Deep Purple and, some amazing bands. I think he worked with Fleetwood Mac back in the day. Yeah, he retired after this, which is kind of too bad just because he did live he lived till 2020, I think. Yeah. So, I mean.
Yeah, which is, that's one of those things where it's like, and, he retired and passed away or something. Oh, yeah, what, like 2 years later? No, like a million years later.
30 years later.
Yeah, it's odd that he didn't. I mean, I guess he just kind of wanted to do other things, but it is. I wonder too, what he could have done had he decided to come back for, that would have been cool if he came back for like Brave New World or something like that.
Right.
That would have been huge.
But I respect people for wanting to retire. I get that piece of the equation, but it's not like he was 60 and he lived to be 90. I mean, I feel like he was in his 40s or something like that, and he retired. But hey, if you can't retire in your 40s, go for it, baby.
Yeah. They are still subject to trends and tastes in music. And I think they were trying to fit in on this one a little bit to what was going on. And I think it was just, I don't want to say it was a swing and a miss, but it was kind of like a foul ball.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Just...
they're trying some stuff to see what sticks to the wall. And
Right.
Some of it does, some of it doesn't. And as an artist, you got to take chances. Metallica lost some hardcore fans because the Black Album was not And Justice for All 2.
Right.
But they picked up millions and millions more because it was different. Yeah. Well, that wraps up our review of Iron Maiden's 1992 Fear of the Dark. Maybe not the best in their catalog. Kind of a tough time for the band with Bruce's impending departure. They're trying some stuff that maybe wasn't necessarily in their wheelhouse just to see if it would help them land some more fans or get some more time on MTV, maybe some better listenership in America. Who knows? It just didn't work out. It just seems like maybe the band was at the end of the rope. However, they create this epic song, Fear of the Dark, which is a classic for them, one that has become uber popular with their fan base and one that's been a pretty big staple of their stage show for certainly the last 20 years or so, maybe longer. We appreciate you hanging out with us and listen to our back-to-back shows on Iron Maiden, and we appreciate you listening. Hope you download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, where it's Good Pods, which is a great place to interact with your independent podcast host, or Apple, iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, wherever you like to get your podcast. Please subscribe. And if you give us a nice review, hey, let us know. We might just read it on the show. Now, next week, we're really excited. We have an author who wrote a novel called Searching for Jimmy Page, about a young girl's journey to understand herself better and grow into maturity and possibly track down the elusive guitar god. Written by Christy Alexander Hallberg. She's going to talk to us about the book and talk to us a little bit about Outrider, Jimmy Page's 1988 solo effort, which was a standout for her and an inspiration, part of why she wrote that book. So that's next week. But until then, for all you rock and rollers all around the world, be cool and stay safe.